Good morning, guys, and welcome to Unique Not Different with me, Shanga. And today I have the principal of Palmyra's Learning Center, Mrs. Erlene Phillips. And Mrs. Erlene Phillips is going to talk about, the child with special needs and their learning development. So, good morning, Mrs. Phillips. How are you?
Good morning, Shamla, and thank you so much for inviting me to your show.
It's a
Uh-huh.
pleasure. So I found it interesting when I read your bio that how you got started in special education, especially for persons with learning and developmental behavioral disabilities. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got started and why you got started?
Okay. Well, my journey in special education started more than 35 years ago. I start my education career started in the public system, in the junior secondary system. And when I entered my first school was Mount Hope Junior Secondary. I remember it clearly. I started teaching, and I felt that, when I started teaching, everybody understood what I was saying. So I will talk and we will discuss, and the children will interact. But when I gave tests, I recognized that the children were not performing the way they should perform. So I started working with them individually to try to find out what is the problem, because my background is science. And I started working and I recognized that they were not connecting, they were not understanding. So then what I recognized after the first term is that many of them could not read. So now I had to find strategies because remember, my background was not education, but this was a problem I recognized that I needed to solve. So, what I started to do is I started to investigate how am I going to teach these children to read. And that, when my career in the public system was supposed to have just been for 5 years, and then I moved on to another career field, I continued in it because I found it very interesting to try to get students to perform to their potential. So I then went and I got qualified I got a master's in inclusive education, and I also did um, some other career areas in the area of education. Mhm.
Right. And that is very commendable because not many people will do that. They would just want to elevate their career
Yes,
um presently. So now being in the field over 30 years, right?
yes, uh-huh.
What recommendation would you give to parents who have a child with a developmental and learning disability, right?
Yes, uh-huh.
Um, okay, so obviously each child is different, right?
Right. Mhm.
Even quote unquote normal children, everybody
Yes,
strategize things differently. A person who is autistic, person with ADHD,
right.
dyslexia, and so on, right?
Mm.
Um, you know, Parents would want them to go to a normal secondary, primary
Right.
school,
Yes.
right, kindergarten. What advice would you give them in order to get that perfect, not perfect, but that solid foundation for their child to move on?
Right. The first thing parents must recognize is that each child is different. And it means that your child will not, all children will not take the same road. So when you start working with your child and you recognize that there is a problem, one of the first things you may have to do, since many parents may not have the experience and may not know what to do, one of the first things they can do is to go and have the child assessed in order to find out exactly what the problem is. Another thing, even before the assessment, is that you can talk with the teacher, talk with the child's teacher to find out, can you give me some advice
Mhm.
on, you have the child in class every day. So you would observe certain things about the child. Can you give me some kind of advice as to how to work with the child? And if you recognize that after working with the child, you're still not seeing the improvement, then what you can do is to have the child assessed by a clinical psychologist, or based on what the problems may be. It may be a speech problem, then they may have to go to a speech therapist. So really and truly, parents need a lot of a lot of guidance when they recognize that there is a problem with their child.
Right.
Yes,
And okay, so let's go on to, the school that you are in, the principal of
yes.
Palmyra Learning Center. Can you tell me a little bit about Palmyra Learning Center and what it entails, the institution entails, and is it that persons are able to, who students are able to write SCE and stuff like that once they enter here? What
Okay.
is
All right. Okay. Well, Palmera's Learning Center started 20 years ago, and we work with children who have learning disabilities and behavioral disorders. The
Mhm,
first thing we have to do when before the child starts is that we have to do an assessment to find out exactly what the problem is, so that we can begin working with them. The
mhm,
classes, the classes are small so that we can give the children individual attention. And the thing about it is, uh, all children can move ahead. It's just that children will take different roads. I always advise parents, do not compare one child to another, because children are different. One child will be able to enter school and have absolutely no problems. Another child will go to school and they will struggle. But you know what? They have to walk, they have to walk different roads. So it means they have to be treated as individuals. Mhm.
yeah. And can you tell me, how persons can reach out to Palmyra Learning Center?
Oh, all right. Well, we can be found on Facebook, and we take students who have mild to moderate disabilities. We are registered with the Ministry of Education, and the thing about it is, we prepare our students for SCA, and and that is at the primary level. We also have a secondary level, because more and more parents are opting to keep their children in the special education arena, since it caters for the individual child, right?
Right.
So we also prepare our children for CSEC. Mhm.
Okay, and just quickly in 30 seconds, can you,
Yes.
what advice would you give to, in general, what advice would you give to teachers and parents, who have to interact
Mhm.
with children with
Right. Okay. Well, for teachers, I know, especially teachers in the public system, because I was once there. I know the classes are huge, but the thing about it is, when you're working with children, recognize that sometimes when you see negative behaviors, it is not always in the control of the child. Sometimes the child is dealing with some kind of learning disabilities, which causes them to become anxious, angry, depressed, and they would lash out. Some of them may have some kind of behavioral disorder, which many times they cannot control. So teachers, try to be a little more patient. I know it
Yeah,
is a very, very difficult task. Parents, as I said before, see children as individuals
yeah.
and do not compare. And try to, when you see a problem, try to
Mhm.
reach out to the Ministry of Education Student Support Center. And I have to say, Student Support Center is very, very supportive. So reach out and get some advice as to the way forward.
Mrs. Phillips, we are out of time, but thank you so much. I've learned
That's
a
no
lot.
problem at all.
I've learned a lot, and I really would like to have you back, to delve into certain things that we spoke about in terms of speech therapy and
Right.
stuff like that, right? So thank you so, so much. And, you have a great day and continue to do what the work that you are doing. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Guys,
Thank you so much, Shamla, for having me.
my pleasure. And guys, with that being said, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in to this week's segment of Unique and Different. Until next week, as I always say, be good, do good. Bye, guys. Bye bye. Thank you.